Hi, I'm Harry Appelman, jazz pianist based in the DC area. On June 13th, my quartet will present a program entitled Selma, Soweto, Bethlehem, Jazz Reflections on Freedom Struggles. This will be our interpretations of music associated with several liberation movements: the U.S. Civil Rights Struggle, South Africa's anti-apartheid movement, and the ongoing struggle of the Palestinian people for freedom and human rights. Of course, the common element here is the universal desire to live in freedom and dignity without being dominated or oppressed, and with the same rights as everyone else. This project grew out of a proposal I submitted last winter when Bernard Gray of East River Jazz was soliciting ideas for concerts based on the theme of social change. And it seemed like a way I could unite two of my passions, one, of course, being music, and the other being a lifelong interest in issues of peace and justice. As a kid growing up, my parents, particularly my mother, were very much involved in various movements of justice and peace, starting with the fair housing movement in the early 60s, the movement against the war in Vietnam, and then a little later on, probably mid-70s, my mother got involved in what was to become a major part of her life, working for peace in the Middle East between the Israelis and Palestinians. She actually became an early advocate for a Palestinian state, and she brought over lots of Israeli and Palestinian speakers to show that there were people there who wanted to live in peace and that peace is possible. So I also have been involved for quite a few years now with various Middle East peace groups, learning about the Israel-Palestine issue and trying to be a voice for peace. So that's why that particular struggle immediately came to mind. This project has been challenging because we're instrumental jazz musicians, and a lot of the music that directly expressed the liberation theme used lyrics to express its message. So I've had to seek out music that's related to these movements in some way, but also suitable for adaptation to an instrumental group. Also, needless to say, I'm a musician. I'm not a history professor. And while I've done a fair amount of research on the music for this project, my primary criteria has been looking for music that's musically interesting. Some of it may come directly from liberation struggles. Other pieces are more just representative of a certain culture. So as jazz musicians, we're used to working with music with a certain kind of melody or harmonic structure, whether it's the music of Cole Porter and Richard Rodgers, that's the basis of the jazz standard songbook, or Antonio Carlos Jobim's music. All these composers had elements that are familiar to jazz musicians that we're used to working with. In contrast, the music of these freedom struggles or their associated cultures often does not have those familiar elements. It's music coming from different cultures and reflecting their respective traditions. For example, the South African music of Hugh Masekela and Miriam Makeba uses very bright sounding major harmonies, which actually often belied the darker revolutionary message that the lyrics carried. Also, the civil rights era music is coming from American culture, but generally is not designed for improvisation. So for both these reasons, some creative vision was needed to adapt the music to our purposes, and this has been a good experience for me. It's stretched me in some new directions. So our group will be playing music by Abdullah Ibrahim, the great South African pianist and composer, by Marcel Khalifa, the oud player and singer who is Lebanese, although his music often dealt with the Palestinian struggle, and he was known for setting the poetry of the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish to music. We'll play John Coltrane's composition Alabama, and my arrangements of various other music from these three areas. Again, these are jazz interpretations of these songs. In researching this project, I was also exposed to a lot of music from some great artists who I had not been familiar with. Reem Kelani and Rim Bana, Palestinian singers. Actually, Rim Bana sadly died a couple months ago. Hugh Masekela and Miriam Makeba from South Africa, of course. So all this, even if some of it didn't end up in the presentation, has definitely broadened my musical horizons. So it's been an interesting experience. The band is going to include Todd Marcus on bass clarinet, Eric Kennedy on drums, and David Jernigan on bass. So I'm lucky to have a great quartet. The concert will be at the Anacostia Playhouse at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 13th. This has been an exploration of some brand new territory for me. A whole different set of influences from the ones I'm used to relying on. I think we've come up with some interesting results. So I hope you'll join us on June 13th. Thanks.